The alien fleet of the Zyrak Empire moved slowly through the dark edge of human space. Their ships were large, sharp, and perfectly aligned. Each one held its position with exact distance and timing. To them, this was the correct way to enter a battlefield. Order meant control. Control meant victory. Inside the main command ship, Commander Threx stood tall, watching the stars through a wide screen. His face showed calm confidence. The Zyrak had studied war for thousands of years. They had faced many species before. Some were strong, some were clever, but all of them followed rules. War had structure. War had honor. War had logic, and the Zyrak had mastered all of it. "Prepare standard formation," Threx said in a steady voice. His officers moved quickly. Every ship shifted into place like pieces of a perfect machine. Lines formed, angles matched, weapons charged in silence. Everything was under control. Then the human ships appeared. At first they looked small and scattered. The Zyrak sensors showed them moving in strange ways. They were not forming lines. They were not holding positions. They were drifting. Some ships moved forward, then suddenly turned. Others slowed down for no reason. A few even crossed paths with each other in ways that made no sense. Threx narrowed his eyes. "Why are they not forming battle formation?" he asked. No one answered, because no one understood. The Zyrak officers began scanning deeper. They checked for hidden patterns. Maybe this was a new kind of strategy. Maybe humans used a different system. But there was nothing, no pattern, no order, no logic, just movement. Unclear, unstable, strange. "It could be a trick," one officer said carefully. Threx shook his head. "No. Even tricks follow rules." Then something unexpected happened. A signal came from the human fleet. The Zyrak communication team quickly captured it. The message was simple but confusing. Their translators worked fast, trying to understand the meaning. Seconds passed. Then one of them spoke, unsure. "Commander, it appears to be humor." Threx turned slowly. "Explain." The officer hesitated. "They are making a joke." The room went silent. A joke? Before a battle? That made no sense. There was no threat, no warning, no demand. Just a strange, meaningless message filled with words that did not belong in war. The Zyrak did not know how to respond. For the first time, their system had no answer. And then, everything changed. Without warning, the human ships moved, fast, too fast. They did not wait for signals. They did not follow formation. They did not prepare. They attacked. Ships rushed forward at sharp, impossible angles. Some came from the front, others from the sides. A few even moved above and below the Zyrak fleet, breaking every known rule of engagement. "Defensive positions," Threx ordered, but it was already happening. Human ships flew directly into Zyrak lines. Some fired weapons wildly. Others kept moving without shooting at all. And then something shocking happened. Two human ships crashed into each other. For a moment, it looked like a mistake, but then they exploded. The blast was huge, bright, violent. The explosion spread into nearby Zyrak ships, damaging shields and breaking formation. "They are colliding on purpose," an officer shouted. More explosions followed. Human ships were turning themselves into weapons. The Zyrak fleet froze for just a second. 1 second of confusion, 1 second of disbelief. That was all it took. The perfect Zyrak formation began to break. Ships moved out of position. Commands overlapped. Signals crossed. Nothing was clean anymore. Nothing was controlled. Threx watched it all unfold. His calm expression slowly changed. This was not war as he knew it. There was no order here. No respect for structure. No logic to follow. Just chaos. Pure, dangerous chaos. "This is chaos," Threx whispered. Around him, the command room filled with noise. Officers spoke over each other. Systems gave warnings. Alarms began to rise. The Zyrak Empire had faced many enemies, but never one like this. An enemy that did not follow rules. An enemy that did not fear loss. An enemy that did not think like them. For the first time in his long career, Commander Threx felt something new. Not anger. Not confusion. Fear. And deep in space, as human ships moved without pattern or limit, the Zyrak Empire began to understand. This war would not be like any other. The Zyrak fleet struggled to recover. After the first wave of chaos, their ships tried to return to formation. Commands were sent again. Angles were corrected. Distances were measured. Order was their strength. They had to bring it back. "Reform defensive grid," Commander Threx said, his voice stronger now. The fleet responded. Slowly, the broken lines began to fix themselves. Ships moved into place. Shields adjusted, weapons locked onto targets again. For a moment, it looked like control was returning, but the humans did not stop. They did not pause. They did not wait. They kept coming. Human ships moved in strange paths, never staying in one direction for long. They rushed forward, then pulled back, then attacked again from a new angle. It made no sense. They are not committing to the attack, one officer said. Threx watched closely. No, they are testing us. The room fell quiet. Testing? That idea felt wrong. In war, you do not waste ships just to learn. Every move must have purpose. Every loss must be avoided. But the human ships, they did not seem to care about losses. One Zyrak ship fired a clean shot, destroying a human vessel, then another, and another. But instead of slowing down, the human attacks became sharper, faster, more precise. They are adjusting, an officer said, his voice uneasy. Threx leaned forward. What do you mean? They are changing their movements after every loss. It is like they are learning in real time. Threx stared at the screen. That should not be possible. Learning during battle was slow, careful, calculated. But this was fast. Too fast. Another wave of human ships rushed forward. This time, they avoided the Zyrak front defenses. They slipped through small gaps that did not exist before. Because those gaps had just been created by the last attack. They are using their destroyed ships to map our weaknesses, the officer said. The words felt heavy in the room. They are losing on purpose to win later. Silence followed. The Zyrak did not understand this way of thinking. To them, every ship was valuable. Every life mattered for the system. War was about minimizing loss. But humans were turning loss into a weapon. A human ship flew straight toward a Zyrak cruiser. It did not fire. It did not turn. It just kept going. Destroy it, Threx ordered. The Zyrak guns fired. The human ship exploded. But just before it was destroyed, it released something. Small objects. Fast-moving. They struck the cruiser's shield at different points. Moments later, another human ship fired at the exact same spots. The shield failed. The cruiser was hit. Heavy damage spread across its side. They are marking our defenses, an officer said, now clearly shaken, and then breaking them. More reports came in. Human ships were targeting engines instead of weapons. They were attacking communication systems instead of command bridges. They were choosing strange targets. But every strange choice had an effect. Zyrak ships began to slow down. Their coordination weakened. Signals became delayed. They are not trying to destroy us quickly, Threx said quietly. They are trying to break how we function. The realization hit hard. This was not just an attack. This was a method, a dangerous one. Another group of human ships appeared on the edge of the battlefield. They did not attack immediately. They waited, watching. Then suddenly, they moved together. Not in perfect formation, but with shared purpose. They struck a single point in the Zyrak line, over and over, fast, focused, relentless. The Zyrak ships in that area could not hold. The line broke, and once again the perfect structure of the Zyrak fleet started to fall apart. Why are they focusing there? An officer asked. Threx answered slowly. Because they know it is weak. But how? They created the weakness. The truth was becoming clear. Humans were not just reacting, they were shaping the battle. Every loss, every strange move, every chaotic attack, it all had a purpose. And that purpose was control. Not through order, but through chaos. A Zyrak officer looked at Threx with fear in his eyes. Commander, how do we fight something like this? Threx did not answer right away. He watched as another human ship moved in an unpredictable path, avoiding 3 attacks before crashing into a Zyrak fighter. Both were destroyed, but the explosion damaged 2 more Zyrak ships nearby, a small loss creating a larger one. It was happening again and again. Threx finally spoke. They are not fighting like a fleet. The officers waited. They are fighting like a storm. The room felt colder, because storms could not be controlled. They could not be predicted. They could only be survived. And for the first time, the Zyrak Empire was no longer sure they would survive this one. Commander Threx stood still, watching the battlefield change into something he no longer understood. The Zyrak fleet had always been perfect. Clean lines, clear commands, predictable outcomes. But now, everything was breaking. Stabilize all sectors, Threx ordered, trying to hold control. The command spread across the fleet. Ships tried to regroup again. Signals were sent with more force. Backup systems activated. This time, the Zyrak did something unusual. They tightened their formation, closer than ever before. If we reduce gaps, they cannot exploit them, one officer said. It was logical. It was correct. It was also exactly what the humans wanted. At the edge of the battlefield, a small group of human ships slowed down. They did not attack. They simply waited, watching. Commander Threx noticed them. "Why are they holding position?" he asked. Before anyone could answer, those ships turned and fled. "They are retreating," an officer said. Threx's eyes sharpened. "No, follow them, but maintain formation." A portion of the Zyrak fleet moved forward, chasing the retreating human ships. Everything seemed normal again. The humans were falling back. The Zyrak were advancing. This made sense. This felt right. Then suddenly, the retreating human ships stopped. All at once, they turned around and flew straight back toward the Zyrak. "Fast. Too fast. Intercept them," Threx ordered. Weapons fired. Explosions filled space. Several human ships were destroyed, but the rest kept coming. And then, they self-destructed. A chain of bright explosions lit up the darkness, but this time it was different. The blasts were not random. They were placed, carefully. Each explosion hit a specific point in the Zyrak formation. Sensors went blind. Communications failed. Shields flickered. For a few seconds, the Zyrak fleet could not see, could not hear, could not think together. And in that moment, the real attack began. From behind, a second human fleet appeared, hidden until now, silent, waiting, watching for the perfect moment. They were never retreating, an officer whispered. They were guiding us. The hidden fleet rushed forward, precise, focused, deadly. They struck the Zyrak ships that had moved out of position during the chase. Engines were hit first, then communication hubs, then command ships. "They are targeting our control systems," someone shouted. Panic began to rise. For the first time, Zyrak ships started acting alone, without clear commands, without perfect timing. Mistakes began to happen. Ships turned too late. Weapons fired at the wrong targets. Signals overlapped and caused confusion. This had never happened before. Commander Thrax felt the shift. The Zyrak were losing not because of power, but because they were losing control. "They knew exactly how we would respond," Thrax said quietly. "They built this moment." On the main screen, he watched a human ship move through the battlefield. It did not rush. It did not panic. It moved calmly through chaos, avoiding attacks, choosing targets, almost like it belonged in this disorder. "They understand this environment," Threx said. "They are comfortable in it." Another report came in. "Commander, multiple fleets are reporting false signals." "What kind of signals?" "Orders, retreat commands, even surrender calls. But they are not from us." Threx's eyes widened. "They are imitating our communication." The realization hit hard. Humans were not just fighting physically. They were attacking the mind of the fleet, confusing it, breaking trust between ships. A Zyrak cruiser suddenly turned and fired at its own ally. It had received a false signal. Seconds later, it was destroyed in return. Chaos spread even deeper. "They are making us fight ourselves," an officer said in disbelief. Threx clenched his hands. Every rule of war had been broken. Every system they trusted was failing. And still, the humans kept moving forward, adapting, changing, winning. On the battlefield, one final event caught Threx's attention. A group of human ships moved directly into the center of the Zyrak fleet. "No fear, no hesitation. They are surrounded," an officer said. "Yes," Threx replied, but he did not sound confident, because he had learned something. Being surrounded did not stop humans. It only gave them more directions to attack from. The human ships split apart suddenly. Each one chose a different target. Each one caused damage before being destroyed. Small actions, big impact. Always the same pattern. Lose small, win big. Threx slowly took a breath. Now he understood. "This is not random," he said. "This is design." The officers looked at him, confused, tired, afraid. "They are not breaking rules for no reason," Threx continued. "They are using our rules against us." Silence filled the room again, because that truth was worse than chaos. It meant humans understood the system and chose to destroy it not with force, but with strategy no one had ever imagined. Threx looked at the battlefield one more time. The perfect Zyrak fleet was gone. In its place was something broken, something struggling, something afraid. And deep inside, Threx realized something that changed everything. This enemy was not just dangerous, this enemy was thinking ahead, always ahead. And the Zyrak Empire was already losing a war they did not even understand. Commander Threx could feel it now. The shift in the battle was no longer small. It was complete. The Zyrak fleet, once perfect and controlled, was now struggling to stay together. Ships were still fighting, still firing, still trying to follow commands, but the unity was gone, and without unity, the Zyrak were weak. "Status report," Threx said, his voice lower than before. An officer responded quickly, but there was tension in his tone. "Multiple divisions are no longer responding to Central Command. Signal interference is increasing. We are losing coordination across all sectors." Another officer added, "3 command ships have been disabled. Backup systems are failing to connect." Threx listened in silence. This was not just damage. This was collapse. He looked at the battlefield again. Human ships were everywhere. Not in lines, not in groups, but moving with purpose. They attacked small targets, then disappeared, then came back from a new direction. It felt like they were inside the Zyrak system now, not outside it. "They are inside our structure," Threx said quietly. No one disagreed, because it was true. The Zyrak had built their entire strength on order. Every ship depended on another. Every command moved through a chain. But now, that chain was broken, and the humans were using those broken links to move freely. "Commander," one officer said carefully, "we still have one option." Threx turned slightly. "Speak. We can deploy the full reinforcement fleet, our strongest force. If we bring everything at once, we can overpower them." The room grew still. This was the Zyrak Empire's final strength, a massive fleet, perfectly trained, perfectly organized. It had never failed before. Threx thought for a moment. Then he nodded. "Send the signal." Across space, a new presence appeared, large, bright, powerful. The reinforcement fleet had arrived, hundreds of ships moving in perfect synchronization. Their formation was flawless, their power unmatched. For a brief moment, hope returned. "This will end it," one officer said. Threx did not respond. He only watched, because he had learned something. Power alone was not enough. The reinforcement fleet moved forward, slow, steady, controlled. They followed every rule. Every step was precise. They advanced like a wall, strong and unbreakable. The human ships noticed, and then they changed. Again, instead of attacking directly, the humans pulled back. They spread out even more. They avoided the main fleet. "They are afraid," one officer said, but Threx shook his head. "No, they are adjusting." The reinforcement fleet continued forward, but something strange began to happen. Without clear targets, their formation started to slow. They were too organized, too structured. They needed clear lines to fight, but the humans were not giving them any. Instead, human ships attacked the edges. Small strikes, quick hits, then gone, again and again, like waves hitting a wall, not strong enough to break it, but enough to weaken it over time. "They are pulling us apart," an officer said. And it was true. To respond to the small attacks, parts of the reinforcement fleet had to move, just slightly, just enough to create space. Tiny gaps, but in war, even the smallest gap matters. Human ships saw those gaps instantly. They rushed in, not many, just enough. They caused damage, then disappeared again. The perfect formation was starting to bend. "Hold positions," Thrax ordered, but it was too late. The fleet had already begun to react, and reaction led to change, and change led to weakness. Then came the final shock. A Zyrak captain, leading one of the reinforcement divisions, made a decision. "We will fight like them," he said. "Break formation, engage freely." It was a desperate move, a dangerous one, and for a moment, it seemed to work. Zyrak ships spread out. They moved faster. They attacked without waiting. The humans slowed, watching, studying. Then, everything fell apart. The Zyrak ships were not built for chaos. They collided with each other. They blocked each other's paths. Their signals overlapped again. Confusion returned. But this time, it was worse, because now they had no structure to return to. Meanwhile, the humans moved smoothly through the disorder, like they belonged in it, like this was their natural state. "They are better at this than we are," an officer said, his voice filled with fear. Threx closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Now he understood everything. "You cannot copy chaos," he said slowly. "You must survive it." On the screen, human ships moved with calm precision inside the broken Zyrak fleet. They were not lost. They were not confused. They were in control, even in disorder. Maybe because of it, a message signal appeared on the screen. From the humans. Trax looked at it. For a second, no one spoke. "Play it," he said. The message was simple, clear, no noise, no confusion, just words. "We don't fight war." A pause. Then the final line appeared. "We survive it." Silence filled the command room. Deep, heavy, real. Commander Threx looked at his fleet one last time. The strongest force of the Zyrak Empire was falling apart. Not because it was weak, but because it had met something different, something that could not be measured, something that did not follow rules. And for the first time, Pubio. This was not just a battle, this was a lesson, and they were the ones learning it. The battlefield had grown quiet, not silent, but different. The loud explosions, the bright flashes, the endless movement, all of it had slowed. What remained was something heavier, something harder to face, defeat. Commander Threx stood still, staring at what was left of the Zyrak fleet. Ships were damaged, formations were gone, signals were weak and broken. This was not how Zyrak wars ended. There was always order, even in victory, even in defeat. But this was something else. "Commander," an officer said softly, "we are receiving retreat requests from multiple divisions." Threx did not answer right away. He looked at the screen, watching human ships move calmly through the remains of the battlefield. They were not chasing, not rushing. They were simply there, like they had already won. "Send the retreat signal," Threx said at last. The words felt heavy. For the first time in Zyrak history, the order was given not because of strategy, but because of fear. Across space, Zyrak ships began to pull back. Slow at first, then faster. They moved away from human space, away from the chaos, away from something they could not understand. And the humans did not follow. "They are not pursuing," an officer said, surprised. Threx watched closely. "Because they do not need to," he replied. The Zyrak fleet was already broken. Chasing them would not change anything. The lesson had already been delivered. As the fleet moved further away, the battlefield grew smaller behind them. But the feeling did not fade. It stayed. Inside every ship, inside every mind, fear, confusion, and something worse, understanding. Hours later, inside the main command chamber, the surviving officers gathered. No one spoke loudly. No one argued. This was not a normal report. This was something new. "Record everything," Threx ordered. "This battle must be studied." An officer nodded. "Yes, Commander." Threx walked slowly toward the center of the room. His movements were calm, again, but different, less confident, more aware. "We believed war was something controlled," he began, "something defined by rules." He paused. "That belief is no longer true." The officers listened carefully. "Humans do not fight like us," Threx continued. "They do not follow structure. They do not protect systems. They do not avoid loss." He looked at the recording of a human ship crashing into a Zyrak vessel. "They use loss." Another image appeared. Human ships changing tactics again and again. "They adapt faster than we can respond." Another Zyrak ships firing at false targets. "They break communication." Another formation collapsing. "They destroy coordination." Threx stopped speaking for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "They do not fight to win battles." The room stayed silent. "They fight to end the ability to fight." The meaning was clear. Humans did not just attack ships. They attacked how war itself worked. Days later, the Zyrak fleet returned to their home system. Damaged. Changed. The Empire welcomed them back, but not with celebration. With questions. With concern. High Command demanded answers. Commander Threx stood before them. "What happened?" one of the leaders asked. Threx did not try to hide the truth. "We were defeated." A low sound moved through the chamber. "That is not possible," another leader said. "Our fleet was superior." Threx nodded slightly. "Yes, in strength." He looked directly at them, but not in thinking. The room fell quiet. "They faced us without rules," Threx continued. "They turned every weakness into a weapon, even their own losses." He paused again. "If we face them the same way again, we will lose again." The leaders exchanged looks. For the first time, doubt entered the Zyrak High Command. "What do you suggest?" one of them asked. Thrax took a slow breath, then answered, "We do not fight humans unless we must." The words were shocking. The Zyrak Empire did not avoid war. Ever. But now, they had a reason. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Stories spread. Other alien species began to hear about humans. At first, they did not believe it. A species that ignores rules. A species that uses chaos as strategy. A species that wins by breaking systems? It sounded impossible, until the Zyrak confirmed it. And slowly, a new idea formed across the stars. A new rule. Simple, clear, and powerful. If humans enter the war, there are no rules anymore. Commander Thrax recorded one final message before leaving his post. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "We were not defeated by strength," he said. "We were not defeated by numbers." A pause. Then his final words, "We were defeated by a species that refuses limits." The recording ended, and far away, in the silent dark of space, human ships continued to move. Unpredictable, uncontrolled, unstoppable. Not just warriors, but something more. A warning for anyone who believed war could ever be controlled again. Years passed, but the memory of that battle did not fade. It stayed alive inside the Zyrak Empire, not as a story of defeat, but as a warning. Commander Thrax no longer stood on the battlefield. He had been moved to a different role, a quieter one. He now worked inside the Zyrak War Academy, where future commanders were trained. But his lessons were not like the others. They were different, because the enemy he had faced was different. A large room filled with young Zyrak officers stood in silence as Thrax walked slowly to the center. Behind him, a massive screen showed the old battle. Human ships moved in chaos. Zyrak formations broke apart. Explosions filled space. "This," Thrax said calmly, "is where everything changed." The students watched closely. Some looked confused. Others looked curious. One of them raised a hand. "Commander, why did the fleet not maintain formation?" Thrax looked at him. "Because formation depends on control," he said, "and control depends on predictability." He turned back to the screen. Humans removed predictability. Another student spoke. "Then why not create stronger rules?" Thrax shook his head. "Rules are only useful if both sides follow them." The room became quiet again. Thrax let the silence stay for a moment. Then he continued. "We spent thousands of years perfecting war. We built systems that could not fail." He paused. "But we never imagined an enemy who would refuse the system itself." The screen changed. Now it showed human ships colliding, sacrificing themselves, creating openings. "They turned weakness into strength," Thrax said. "They turned loss into progress." A third student spoke, his voice uncertain. "Commander, how do we defeat something like that?" Thrax did not answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly between the rows of students. Then he said something simple. "You do not defeat it." The students looked at each other, confused. "You survive it," Thrax added. The lesson ended, but the idea stayed. Across the galaxy, the same message was spreading. The Zyrak were not the only ones who had faced humans. Other species had their own encounters. Some were small, some were short, but all of them ended the same way. Confusion, loss, fear. One alien alliance tried to study human behavior. They collected data, recorded battles, built models. They tried to predict human actions. But every time they thought they understood, humans changed. Again, and again, and again. "They are not consistent," one researcher said. "That is the pattern," another replied. Meanwhile, humans continued to grow, not just in strength, but in reputation. They were no longer seen as just another species. They became something else, a factor, a risk, a turning point in any war. If humans joined a side, the war changed. If humans entered late, the outcome changed. If humans were involved at all, everything changed. Back at the Zyrak Academy, Thrax recorded one final teaching for future generations. He stood alone in a quiet room, no students, no noise, just a single recording device. He began to speak. "If you are watching this," he said, "then you are preparing for war." He paused. "Everything you have learned will help you. Structure, discipline, strategy, these are important." He looked directly into the recorder, but they are not enough. The screen behind him showed human ships again, moving without pattern, without fear. "If you ever face humans," Thrax continued, "remember this. They will not do what you expect. They will not follow what you know. They will not respect what you build." His voice became heavier. "They will break it." A long silence followed. Then he said the final line. "And they will win because of it." The recording ended. It was stored in the deepest part of the Zyrak military system, not as history, but as preparation. Far away beyond Zyrak space, a small alien fleet received a message. They had just discovered a new species, humans. The report was simple: low formation discipline, unpredictable movement, unusual communication behavior. The fleet commander read the report, then gave a simple order: do not engage. His officers were surprised. Commander, they appear weak. The commander shook his head slowly. I have seen this before. He looked out into space, where distant human ships moved freely. No rules, he whispered. And for the first time, he chose caution over confidence, because the lesson had spread across empires, across systems, across time. Humans were no longer just part of war. They had changed it, and in the quiet dark between the stars, that change continued to grow, unseen, unstoppable, waiting for the next battle, where once again, there would be no rules,